What is up, jabronis? JJ back here with Coop and Kager talking a little NASCAR. Enjoy Illinois 300. Coop, did I get that right?
Yeah, man.
See, with your guys' help, look at what we can do. Dreams can come true. Jason, we were talking about this off live video, but I love the new shtick up top. I know you normally do the fitted, but big fan over here in this corner. It's actually making me think about doing it again. I will say this though, I shaved my head during COVID, and I went into the sun. That was a brutal mistake. I did not realize how bad or how quickly your head can burn. I mean, I've always had hair on my head, so when I shaved it all, whatever it was, 2-3 years ago, it was burning for 2 weeks. I couldn't even, like, showering hurt. It was not my speed necessarily. But how do you handle the sun out like that?
It's not bad for me. I'm just lazy and I let my hair grow out, which is why I always end up wearing a hat. But anytime my hat has been off my head the last 5 years, it's been shaved because I am going horrifically bald and I just don't have hair.
JJ, don't you know he doesn't have to worry about the sun, man. He just sits in that corner, man, all the time, man. He never goes out, man. That's what people say.
I get
Love it. I mean, Kegger, you're just gonna take that from Coop? I mean, you're just gonna let him just fire away like that?
Seems to be a lot of people's opinion, so I don't know what I get.
All right, so let's start. Let's get this show on the road, or road on the show, as they say. Coop, as far as a track or course breakdown here, before we go into some DFS stuff and maybe some bet stuff as well from Kegger. This track, what's different about it? I know we don't have as many Dominator points this week. Definitely not as many as we had last week. And also, like, I want to get your guys' opinion, and maybe not now, but I want to bring this up now. Is it just me, or is Ross Chastain running so fucking pure this year? Think about all the car wrecks and crashes and tire failures and engine failures and hits into the side of the wall. I'm not discrediting Chastain. I'm not discounting his success, but what I am saying is it's like you go through the list. Everybody's basically had multiple accidents, multiple issues with tires, multiple issues with just randomness with these new cars. Chastain, the only issue he had was when he picked the wrong way when Kyle Busch got into an accident 2 weeks ago. Other than that, this dude has been as clean as anybody. So I'm interested to talk to you guys on that, because at what point does that pureness stop? But either way, Coop, yeah, feel free to touch on that and maybe talk on the track as well.
We'll start with that because actually Jay and I were talking about that earlier on the bet show, because Chastain is due for some negative regression. When you look at the season of how inconsistent Joe Gibbs has been, when you look at how inconsistent Hendrick Motorsports has been, Chastain has been consistent every single week with the car being fast. And, what is he doing to do that? I have no idea, but I don't think he can keep it up. And then, as you mentioned, he hasn't seen the negative regression yet with the car, but he is starting to see it with the results, with what you were saying at the All-Star race. He had issues with the wreck, and then, he got caught up in that wreck at the end of the race last week. So, if he can continue to do it, hats off to him, man. But based upon what we're seeing, I would say he's going to get caught up with some negative regression at some point. Any thoughts on that, Jay?
Yeah, I agree. And what's crazy is he's running so pure that he wins the Coca-Cola 600 if Kyle Larson doesn't get lightly loose and drift up into him, because Chastain was going to slingshot on that restart the whole field. And he is running really pure. And Coop's right. You're starting to see the results are not matching the speed anymore, because he's a top 5 car, no doubt, in terms of speed. But yeah, I think Coop's right. I think, yeah, he could be the top Chevy today, 100%, but regression's coming.
Yeah, and I'm just super happy that they finally fixed his pricing. I mean, now this dude's finally 10K. Not that he's been seeing like egregious ownership, but like people wouldn't have even been playing him at all if he was priced in this range 3-4 weeks ago. Now, granted, he's going to see ownership today just because of this race. It's been hard to pass, and he's got some coming from, I think, 10th or 11th. He can get some points there if he shoots up to the front. But Coop, it's actually a good segue. Feel free to talk on this track a bit. It's seemingly going to be brutal to pass here. So how are you approaching that? And how are you approaching, we have some interesting guys at the front. And is it just me or Christopher Bell just consistently does good in these like lap? Like this dude's always in the top. This guy's always starting third or fourth in every race. But anyway, you have Cindric and Chastain at the front. Chastain's an interesting number here, kind of like out of nowhere with this 8-1, 9-1 odds. Maybe you guys know this. Was he steamed to that? Because there's no way he opened at that, right?
Chase Briscoe, you mean?
Chase Briscoe. Oh, I said Chastain. Yeah, Chase Briscoe. Sorry.
No.
He was at 20, 25.
Yeah, because he won Phoenix, which is a comparable track, and he was very fast. The Fords crushed in practice. So, I mean, he's going to be a contender today.
Yeah, I see him. I see him now. I know you said 25-1, Kuba. I'm seeing him at DraftKings. Unless I'm reading 8-1.
No, 9.5-1. He was at FanDuel. You can get.
Oh wow, so even better there. Yeah, it's just been weird because I don't think he would have opened at that. So maybe he got steamed into this area. But on a track that's seemingly going to be hard to pass, he's starting from the 1. He should be able to beat Cindric out front. Should be. But anyway, Coop, feel free to talk this track a bit. Talk us through it.
So real quick, back to Chastain. It's not that I don't like Chastain or anything, and what he is doing for the sport is, awesome. Because, he's been a journeyman and he stuck his head out and said, hey, I'm going to give up this ride and I'm going to, hope that I get, this ride. And it worked out for him. And, he's showing the dream that everybody can be, if you just stick with it. So, nothing against him personally, though. As far as the track goes, this first time the Cup Series has been here. It's a 1.25 mile flat track. A lot of people are calling it Phoenix, Richmond, Martinsville, Darlington, Loudon combinations. If you listen to it over the weekend, every driver basically said this is a Phoenix comp track. And then the other ones said it's a Martinsville comp because of how difficult it was to pass at Martinsville. And that's what they expect to, see today, it being extremely difficult to pass. And one of the reasons it's difficult to pass is because of all the shifting they're going to be doing. We've seen shifting quite a bit this year, but this race will probably have the most shifting we've seen the entire year, as they're shifting 3 times on one single lap. So, we've seen, that some drivers are comfortable with it. Some drivers are struggling with it. I was talking to Jay earlier this week, if we can find an edge who is really good with it on the tracks that we've seen a lot and so on and so forth. But, Briscoe seems to be extremely comfortable with shifting. So that's that piece. And then, it is 240 laps. Not a lot of Dominator points out there, but more than what you would see at like a road course, but not like what you would see at like a regular short track of 400 laps or like what we saw last week. So the key is you got to hit those 2 or 3 Dominators, maybe even just one. That happens. If you look at Phoenix early this year, they had 2 main Dominators and then a third, who was, fairly significant. And then if you look at Martinsville, it was just flat out 2 Dominators. So, I think 2 is the sweet piece, with some lineups having 1 and some lineups having 3. The other big thing for this track, and Jay and I talked about it significantly on the bet show, was pit lanes. This is different than most, as there's an access lane off of it, and then there's an access lane onto it. Going onto it, there's no speed limit. So if you're pitting under green, you can go as fast or as slow as you want. And I think if we do see some green flag pit stops, that's going to be an opportunity for drivers to either gain speed, or not speed, but time, or lose time. But then once you get on it, there's the regular pit road speed. And the biggest thing is the size. The pit stalls are small, and the area that they're driving on is extremely small. It's 16 feet less width than what we saw at Charlotte. So I think the biggest thing, this race is either going to be won on restarts, because that's your best opportunity to pass, and then on pit road, because you're going to see some cars run into each other when they have, a bunch of cars on pit road, and then you're going to see cars that get blocked in. And this is a huge, huge, huge advantage to Chase Briscoe, because he has that first pit stall. And if he stays out front and they all pit, he comes down, he does his pit, he ain't got to worry about anything. And as long as he does that, he doesn't have to worry about pit road. Whereas, let's say a Kyle Busch, he has, a driver pitting in front of him who could block him in. We'll say, I was talking to Jay, I like Joey Logano. The one thing that concerns me is his pit stall. He doesn't have anybody in front of him, but he's one of the first pit stalls as you get on the pit road, which means he has to travel that long distance down pit road. And there's an opportunity for all them cars to jump out in front of him, and run into him. Or if other cars, get out before him, they have this minutes, and then he runs into the back of them or something. So there's, pit road's going to be busy. The good thing about pit road, though, is we should only see really 3 pit stops in the first stage, 1 in the second stage, and 1 in third stage. Because I don't think the drivers up front are going to be pitting that often, more than what they need to, which would be those 3 times, because they don't want to give up the valuable track position. So, but then the other piece is you might see some cars just take 2 tires. Lord knows, maybe we'll even see cars take no tires depending upon, the situation. So that could really, jumble up, them coming on and off of pit road, and then also the running road.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting track. And I think that, as I look through the boards and I look through some of the SaberSim stuff as well, it's really hard. And especially since we're not exactly expecting a whole lot of accidents here. Granted, that could happen, but we're not exactly expecting a lot of. Oh, go ahead, Coop.
No, you touched on that. So, for those that saw practice got started with a lot of flat tires. 3 of those flat tires came from Hendrick. And then there were a couple other drivers that had flat tires. It all happened within the first 15, 20 laps. And a lot of people said, oh, shit, here we go again. I think that was just the nature of those teams trying stuff, because once that happened and they were done, there was no more issues the rest of the way. And then if you look at the Martinsville race, you look at the Phoenix race, very, very, very few flat tires, very few incidents whatsoever. So, I'm not expecting this to be like what we saw at Charlotte or some of the other 1.5 mile tracks this week.
Okay, good to know overall. I think, like I said, we shouldn't see accidents, but again, it's been a very, really weird with this new car stuff. Jay, on your end, anything you want to talk on relative to the track before we get into some plays?
No, I think Coop nailed it. The drivers are comparing it to Phoenix and Martinsville, most of all. So I based my basic comp tracks off those 2 with a little bit of Richmond, maybe. Aside from that, not really. We could get into the cars and everything. Ford crushed.
All right, cool. So Dominators, right? So I know there's not a whole lot of points up for grabs today. However, you're going to need one of these guys, likely in the optimal, because unless somehow, Dominator points get completely split and place differential reigns pure today, you're likely going to need at least one of these guys, maybe even another. Again, especially it's going to be super hard to pass here today. So Coop, who do you like from a Dominator perspective?
Briscoe, Cindric, Logano, Blaney. As Jay said, Ford was dominant in practice, specifically those 4 drivers. And it's just not that they were the fastest. Minus Kyle Busch, they were the fastest by far. Kyle was really the only one who time-wise was able to keep up with them. So those 4 are the 4 they should be the most popular. So my intention is to get as high overweight on those 4 as I possibly can. Now, how do you play them? That's the interesting part. I think, whoever gets out in front of Briscoe and Cindric, they're going to win stage one, because I think they're just going to be content to drive around and see what happens. There's no need to push at the beginning of the race. So, I think you got to go there. But I give the edge to Briscoe a little bit because of the shifting and, the fact that he's just been flat out fast at this track so far this weekend and at Phoenix. And then, Logano was very, very fast in practice over his long runs. And Blaney wasn't far behind him. So I think, if those four Fords get up front and they're 1, 2, 3, 4, it's going to be an issue for the rest of the field because they're just going to drive off and protect each other until we get down to the end and let it come down to pit road. So I think they all have an opportunity to lead laps. Whether it's one of them, if I was playing a one Dominator lineup, it would be Briscoe. Because I would not be 100% surprised if he leads almost every lap of this race, because I think there's a scenario that plays out for that, where if he stays out front and he's got that incredible pit position, he could lead all those laps. But then, Logano, Blaney, and Cindric, are all not far behind Briscoe. So it's just a matter of how you play them. I think you can play 2 of them. I think you can play all 3 of them. I wouldn't play 4 of them. But, the other piece too is the fastest laps. Like how many of these drivers of the 4 can get fastest laps, but not necessarily get, laps led? Because if, let's say, one of them gets 20 and the other gets 30 and they didn't lead many laps, that's still going to be a huge boost to their point total, because you're not going to see drivers today go from 25th position to 10th position. Place differential is very limited today, unless, for whatever reason, we see a chaotic race. So those fastest laps can become more valuable than place differential. And, it's hard to predict who's going to get those, but those are my 4. I did, I put Tyler Reddick up there. I think, he showed some fast speed. My concern with Reddick, though, is the long run speed. So, I could see him surprise. Bell's another one, but I'm taking a stand on Bell and not playing him. He, like you said, has started extremely well in a lot of races this year. He's had his issues. For him, though, this is probably his best, I don't want to say track, but, style of race, meaning flat tracks. He's very, very good at them. My concern, though, is he was incredibly slow in practice. Toyota as a general was not fast, but they did come back after practice and they showed some single lap speed in qualifying that was better than their practice speeds. So, that's encouraging from that standpoint. But I just think that those 4 Fords are that much better than, Bell and then anybody else who's up there.
Makes a lot of sense for a few different reasons. And I think the builds, we're going to see here are going to be, I guess we could talk to it more as we go through the middle tier and the lower tier, but on the front end, I think you're going to see a lot of people playing guys in that first 5. Now, granted, you normally do, but they kind of made pricing mistakes here. Like a track like this, Briscoe should be higher priced. Like, I don't want to say he's a free square, but if the dude doesn't crash today, it's hard to fathom he's going to be outside the top 10, right? And I mean, yeah, he's going to lose some points for differential if he finishes like 6th or 7th. But remember what you're paying for him. You're paying like $7,800 for. You're not losing salary playing him today. And Cindric, $6,800. Like, what are we doing? So in most cases, this would be right. On a track where passing is going to be frequent, but it's going to be hard to pass here.
Kind of brings up like if you, I don't know if you were even playing NASCAR DFS at the time, JJ, but they used to not put out pricing until qualifying came out.
That's how they should have been doing it, yeah.
And then the COVID area come, and then they, kind of switched it around, So, those are some interesting points. Like, what would Briscoe be and what would Cindric be if, they priced it, after qualifying and after practice?
Yeah. Like I say, it's been this pricing to me is super frustrating because first of all, these cars have had their own flavor of variance. And now today, like if you're somebody who just really relies on your odds, like your sportsbook odds to bet, like why are you not just like locking in, maybe not locking in, but going way overweight? I mean, what do you think? What do you think Briscoe's ownership is going to be, Coop?
I mean, I think it should be at least 50%. Yeah. But like I always say, like the ownerships aren't as high as what I think they should be. So it wouldn't surprise me if he came in at 35 to 40%. This is also another good race to lock in a driver and just go 100% on them because the attrition should be low. And, that's when you want to lock in on a driver because of all the variance that happens within this sport due to the wrecks and things of that nature. So, I could just see myself locking in Briscoe because, like you said, even if he leads those first 45 laps, he gets 10 of those fastest laps, he finishes third, still a pretty damn good shot at his price that he's going to be optimal.
Yeah, agreed. A lot of ways to skin it, but it is, you can kind of hone in on a certain strategy today. But speaking of that, Kager, on the guys up front, who's your favorite guy up front to kind of maybe take the bull by the horns today?
I think that if you're going to bet one of them, you have to bet all of them. I think that they're priced at a point where you can take Briscoe at 9.5 to 1. You could take Cindric at 14 to 1, Logano at 10 to 1, and Blaney at 10 to 1. Now, Cindric was 60 to 1. Some of these prices have moved, don't get me wrong, but they're still based on what we saw in practice. There is still value at the current numbers that Penske and Chase Briscoe are at. So I'm going to bet them all, full transparency, personally. But I bet Logano and Cindric already earlier in the week, and I'm going to take Blaney and Chase Briscoe today. So that it really is so cut and dry today. It's Ford. It's those four specifically, and nobody should touch them based on what we saw in practice. So, like Hendrick Motorsports was awful off the trailer. And what we've seen this year is if you come off the trailer bad, chances are you're going to stay bad. You cannot make enough adjustments right now during the race if these cars are off to be a contender later on. That's what it looks like so far this year. So, like going into the week, credit to Coop. He told me going into the week, Penske is going to be strong. And he was dead on the money, man. They were strong in practice and untouchable. We both liked Elliott earlier in the week because if you look at the comp tracks, Elliott and Byron both ran well at Martinsville and Phoenix, and they should have had speed. I don't understand why they didn't. They came off the trailer a dead duck. So it's you back the Fords today. You take Ford at plus 155, and that's it. You move on.
One more note on here is they've already been through their tech, but we could see some unapproved adjustments from cars. If like one of the cars who are up front does have some unapproved adjustments, they go to the rear. They get scored from their starting position. That would make me have some significant changes within that driver due to how hard it is to pass on this track. So pay attention to that if it happens.
Yeah, good point. When do you think we're going to get all that information, Coop, by 2:00?
Oh, no. I mean, it could happen up until usually no more than 15 to 20 minutes before the start. Usually it does happen, an hour or two beforehand, but, we've seen it as late as, 15, 20 minutes sometimes, but not often.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, let's move over to place differential drivers. Before we do though, let's amp up our likes here. You got 120 people watching and only 30 likes. This is normally the part of the show where
Shit, man, we should have at least 60 likes just for Jay's head.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Think about the sacrifices Jason made today.
Thank you.
All of you.
People were calling me Butterbean.
Yeah, I mean, how is that fair?
Yeah.
How is that fair at all? So, yeah, look, I normally tell you to get your fingers out of your ass or stop jerking off while you're watching the show. Look, the porn can wait. I think until then, just go ahead and click the like button. Let's boost ourselves up here. We deserve it. And again, do it above all else, do it for Jay's head. Do it for Jason's head. Okay. So yeah, if you could like the video, we'd really appreciate it. And question, because I think we talked about this briefly on the show, you can pull off the bald look. When I did it, my head looked like the top of a cock. I think that you do a really good job pulling it off though, Jay. So keep up the good work there. And Coop, I'll tell you what, if you shave your head too, you'll make me think about doing mine as well. Kind of fit the narrative of this show. I know you got kind of like the military cut right now, but hey, maybe
tell me he doesn't look like John Cena's dad.
That's it. That's a good point. All right. So yes. And also for today, Jay, your live show, I bet you tell the folks a little bit about it and really what they're missing out on being able to sweat NASCAR with you guys.
Yeah. If you guys have the time to live bet, it's an extra $10 a week. We do about 20 hours of content a week. We usually bank profit. We had a big night last night. We picked up like 12 units in the UFC. And we had the truck race winner, Coop and I, at 12-1. And with 3 laps left with a 2.5-second lead, there was a caution and it ended up costing us the race. But if you have the time, you can go to the website and it's next to all the packages. Also, if you have the time, you could use the promo code bets 25 off or get bets to add the bets package if you already have the DFS side, which I encourage everybody to do. JJ won't blow himself, but I will. He's on a ridiculous run in baseball. Him and Joey 17-6 to start the year or June in baseball. So Tyler and Spread are rolling along with the NBA finals. So I encourage everybody to check that out as well.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Jay. Yeah, so let's move over to place differential. Coop, who do you like to move their way up the ranks today?
There's a lot of, I don't want to say there's a lot of place differential available. There's a decent amount, maybe let's say average to slightly below average of what we see on a normal race. But Kevin Harvick's my favorite by far. He showed speed earlier this year on the flat tracks. He's been keeping the car clean. And he's just been finding solid finishes. So I don't expect him, like I said last week, to be a top 5 car, unless carnage happens, what happened, and being a top 5 car. I think he can get to the top 10 today, though. The remaining drivers on this list: Keselowski, Austin Dillon, Alex Bowman, Will Byron. People are going to flock to play them. I will not have any of them, not one of them. We saw earlier this year, the cars that were slow, they're not going to get speed. And in order to pass, you have to have speed, especially on a very difficult track. I expect, the attrition to be low. I expect these drivers to be competing against each other all day. And that's in the back. Jay mentioned earlier, it's hard to fix your car if you come off the truck bad. And, if they aren't good, which they weren't in practice, and they're going to, take pit stops, they're going to take additional pit stops compared to what the other ones are, which is going to hurt their place differential, opportunities again. I will say, the one that I do not mind taking a shot on is Austin Dillon. He's somewhat sneaky on these flat tracks. But the piece that I like about Austin Dillon is his pit crew. They're top 5 this year, not just for like Chevy, but every single team out there. So his pit crew has been very good. But I will be staying away from these guys. I think, you're going to see a lot of ownership on them, especially Byron, and then some on Bowman. But, Byron needs a top 10 to pay off. I don't think he has a shot at a top 10 based upon what we've seen this week. I think a top 15 would be stretching it. Bowman was even worse than Byron. So I'm just going to stay away from him.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. And then Jay, on your end, as Coop mentioned, passing is going to be very difficult today. What's your take? Anybody from the middle or the rear that you think could find their way into the top 10 late?
Maybe directly outside the top 10. I'm sure that there will be some movers, but not enough that's going to make you want to get down on anybody to be in the top 10. It's basically a dead market right now. They've priced us out of it. Last year was the last year you could really find value there. Now it's top 3 and top 5s. So no, I don't like that. I like a few other props we'll talk about later, but nothing there.
All right, cool. Let's slide over to, real quick, because we're going through this, guys, for all the folks watching. We're basically running through our playbook here, right? And we're also talking on plays we really like, which would consider to be our core plays. Run Pure Sports is where we're different, right? We run a playbook for every slate, obviously including NASCAR and core plays, where you get 3 to 4 options from all of us in every sport. Obviously this is NASCAR, but we do the core plays for every sport, especially the main sports. And if you don't know what it is, it's basically, it's handing you a layup, right? It's building half your lineup and you just got to finish the rest. Our members love that from all aspects. So definitely give that a shot, especially if you sign up. And the Discord, I think Discord alone, you get to tag guys like Coop, and even on the bets end, you get to tag all of us and any DFS. We're all in there. So you just tag us, you ask a question. We often get back to you relatively quickly. It's just access to us that you wouldn't have without a subscription. So, be sure to check it out once you do it. And, we also have these up to lock shows as well. Like this is not a pure up to lock show because there's still about an hour and a half before the race starts when the show ends. But, we have these shows where you just fire away with questions up to lock in terms of how you want to build. We all build lineups and we all second guess ourselves and we all, have our own metrics, our own process. But, it is nice to be able to bounce things off of individuals on this team all the way up to lock. So, feel a little more comfortable about your lineup. So yeah, definitely check that out, especially if you're a member. If you're not, you're just missing out. Okay. So let's move over to the middle tier. Drivers that aren't priced relatively high. Maybe some are priced relatively high. But where do we think we could find some interesting spots here? So you need from this spot, you're going to need guys to finish probably T5 from here in that realm, if you will, if you're going to be on the optimal, especially if you're going to pay up for some of the dollar prices some of these guys are. So you have guys like Kyle Busch. I'd argue Kyle Larson might be in here as well. Chase Elliott and some of the cheaper guys. But Coop, run us through who you like.
Two of my favorite in here, there's really 3 of them that I'm eyeing, is Kyle Busch. I mentioned earlier, he had some speed. Kyle has just been a driver this year where he's, hanging on and just making the car better as the race goes. And he's finishing well, even when he's had his accidents and things of that nature. He finds a way to get it done. I think, Kyle would need some of those fastest laps that I talked about earlier. Some way, I think his chances to lead are limited. If I was picking a driver other than the 4 that Jay mentioned earlier to win this race, Kyle Busch would be my target. The speed was getting better on the longer run. It's just a matter of he's starting 12th. Is there enough time? And I know it sounds crazy, but this is a short race, 240 laps, and that's going to take laps to pass each other. So does he have enough time to get up there? And when he does get up there, does he have the speed to compete with those 4 cars? So I don't mind him. And then his brother Kurt Busch, I really like Kurt. Kurt starts 11th, and he showed speed all throughout this year, and he was one of the better Toyotas out there. And I just like his attitude in general. He's been very, very positive. here recently. He's very happy right now, and I think that goes a long way. But, I've talked about this on the show with Jay earlier. If Kurt can somehow find his way up into the 6th, 7th position, he has a very good pit stall too. He's going to be pitting right behind Chase Briscoe. And if Briscoe's, out in front of him, Briscoe's obviously going to get off pit road first, which means Kurt, one, doesn't have to worry about much traffic coming down the side of him because he's up front. And then 2, he's going to have a clear path because Briscoe's going to be gone. So I like that aspect for him too. Do I think he has upside to win or dominate? No. Could he possibly get some of them fastest laps? Possibly. But I think, he has a chance to finish anywhere from 5th, 6th, and 7th. He's a great pivot off of Harvick. And I think he's also a great driver to play with Kevin Harvick. The other one is Eric Almirola. Almirola is very good on these flat tracks. And, he's starting 8th. I think that's going to keep people off of him. The price is cheap. So if he just finishes 7th or 8th, he's basically going to pay off for you. If something happens to a driver or 2 up front, I think he has that top 5 ability. And I was telling Jay earlier too, I think that Stewart Haas in general races better than what they practiced because they're long run drivers for the most part. And, that's going to favor them as the race goes on and we see these long green runs. So I like Almirola too. And then, I put Chase Elliott in there too. I don't know if I can get to Chase Elliott. I would probably say he was the number 3 or 4 Chevy based upon what we saw this weekend in practice and qualifying. He starts 16th, which gives him some solid place differential upside. But again, he has to finish top 5. And what I've seen out of him, he's not going to get there unless there's some attrition from the drivers who, are starting, well in front of him. The other piece is his price isn't too bad. He's in the low 10Ks. He has that place differential upside, and then his name is Chase Elliott. So I think he's going to get some good ownership. And I think for what you're paying in the ownership and what his actual upside is, I think he's a solid fade.
Yeah, I think Chase Elliott's a really interesting piece because the dude is really having issues passing on these tracks. Granted, everybody is, but he has not been the name of Chase Elliott this season by any means. I make the same argument for Martin Truex, Coop. These guys have just not been the best versions of themselves. Now, whether it's the car, whether it's them, the pit crews all around. But so definitely a lot of.
I buried Kevin Harvick, but I think I might have to put Martin Truex down below Kevin Harvick right now. Kevin Harvick, it's given me some glimpses of, he can win possibly on the right track, whereas Truex is just bad. And the guy's going to retire. He said earlier this week, he'll let everybody know in a couple of weeks. He's thinking about it every day. And I think, if he's thinking about it that much, I think the time's come for him.
Question, Coop. What do you think Byron and Bowman's ownership today is going to be? They're priced high enough where it doesn't let you get dominators or maybe the dominators you want in your lineups, but they're probably the 2 safest place differential drivers. What do you think their ownership is going to be today?
I would not be surprised if Byron was around 30 and Bowman 20. Like I said, Bowman was significant.
I actually think that's going to be pretty low.
Well, I don't know. I did it earlier this year when we had a bunch of drivers starting the back who were, slow in practice, and they all stayed slow except for one of them. So, I'm going to take my chances and let people pay Byron and let people play Bowman. I don't blame you by any means. I do think they're going to see a little more ownership in that because here's the thing, Coop, when you're building lineups, you really have a few options, right? Like you can either get really silly and play a lot of, Stenhouse, Dillon, and Keselowski, or you got to play a guy like Almirola, who is going to have limited upside, but he's safe, quote unquote. And again, to me, I'll probably go back to the Keselowski because I just love burning money. The guy consistently starts from the back.
and he never has speed, which is annoying. But like when you look at who he's priced with, it's like him or Austin Dillon, or again, you end up paying for guys like Bowman to try to get yourself someplace differential points somewhere. So it's an interesting scenario all around. I'm probably going to be again overweight on Kez, but it's not like that's made me money this year.
It's going to be interesting because Byron is right at 10K basically. He's going to get some ownership, like you said, and then Chase is a little over 10K. He's going to get some ownership. But I would rather take my shot at paying for Kyle Busch, who I think, has an outside shot at winning the race and has a very good shot at getting some of the fastest laps and a top 5. Whereas I don't see that coming from Elliott or Byron this week. And then I think people are going to jump on Denny Hamlin too, because, he won last week. He was solid in practice. He's really good on these flat tracks. But I'm going to stay away from Denny also.
I think Denny is going to be one of the odd guys out this week in terms of ownership. I know that he obviously has the upside, but I guess if you want to leverage it, so you just look at how he's priced with the guys at the top. You're going to pay that price on this slate. He basically has to win the race because look at who he's priced around and the amount of points he's going to need from a multiplier perspective. From his starting position, he's not going to be able to get much place differential. But yeah, if the guy sneaks his way up to the front and leads laps, great. But another guy that's kind of had his car duct taped a bit, but he's been showing some consistency recently. And again, your guy's boy. I say your guy's boy, but Chastain's going to see ownership again. He always sees ownership,
right?
And he's priced in the same area.
So you bring up an interesting piece. Like we know Byron and Elliott are going to be, the most popular drivers up there. I would probably say Truex is going to be, the lowest owned of those drivers up there. But then you have Denny, Chastain, Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson. Those 4. Like of those 4, I would think that Chastain gets the most ownership.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Do you think it goes to Kyle Busch then, or do you think it goes to Denny? And do you think Kyle Larson's an odd man out this week too?
I think when you're constructing, I think it's really going to be how you build your lineups. Granted, if you're using optimizer, that's one thing. But to me, if you're building lineups and you really like Briscoe and Cindric, like you really don't want too many more dominators from that point, because where's your extra points going to come from? So if you're doing it that way, I think you're maybe going to take 1 or 2 more guys, maybe maximum, and then you're going to look for place differential to get you points from the.
But here's the problem. Coop and I had a conversation about this because I sent him my lineup that I was going to play in the 121 single, and I asked him about the tweaks or anything. And he brought up a great point. Fastest laps are going to matter more. And if you take 3 of those Penske guys or Briscoe and 2 of those Penske guys, you have a much better chance of leading laps and getting the fastest laps, which could very likely spread across 3 or 4 of them, like Coop mentioned earlier. So like, it's just a matter of, are you weighing fastest laps over place differential this week?
Like I my thought process with that, if you start with, let's say, a Briscoe and a Cindric, does that mean other people are going to start playing, the Elliots, the Chastain, the Busch, the Hamlins? Or do you stick with Logano or Blaney and make it a third? Because they're cheaper than all 4 of those drivers I just mentioned. They have more upside from a win, fastest laps, and laps led perspective than any of them other drivers. And if all of them falter, but they all do kind of decent, but nothing great, Logano and Blaney are going to win out because they're cheaper.
Fair enough.
Right.
Fair enough. I think, like I said, it always makes things interesting on how to best to construct these items. But it makes it fun too, right? I think that's what kind of makes all these things so much fun. All right, so let's move over to your value town drivers, where you're finding your biggest price points today. I personally am doing a complete dump of a lot of these drivers in SaberSim, but Coop, what do you think value wise? And do keep in mind, as far as lineup construction goes, the more lineup value guys you play, unless you're going to leave a lot of money on the table, and especially since we don't think there's going to be a lot of attrition, it makes it interesting or unique to want to love anybody on the bottom. But walk us through who you like value-wise.
So this is where I'm going to be different, than others. We'll start with AJ Allmendinger. The guy starting 35th, $6,200 or something like that. My concern with AJ, and this is strictly GPP, is he's only made the value that he needs to in this race, meaning 22nd or better finish 1 out of 5 times this year in Cup. The car hasn't been fast. And then my big kicker is when he got off the plane last night from Portland, it's the first time he stepped on this track. He's still yet to run a lap on this track, which I think is a huge disadvantage to him. I think he's going to be popular. 1, he won yesterday. 2, he's starting 35th, and people are going to look at it on the paper and say he has a lot of upside. I think he's going to get past Josh Bilicki, Cody Ware, BJ McLeod. But then after that, I think he's going to have problems passing anybody else. So for me, I'm going to stay away from AJ. And, much like at the top with Ford, I'm going to stick with Ford on the bottom. Cole Custer's my favorite down here. He starts 14th. If you look at Cole Custer's results on flat tracks, they're phenomenal. They're phenomenal versus the top tier drivers, which makes it even more impressive what he's doing against his peer group in this range. He has top 10 upside, and nobody's going to play him because he's starting 14th. Then you have Harrison Burton. All right. Harrison Burton qualified 9th. When you look at the practice speeds down here, he was much, much, much better than anybody else in his peer group. And if you look and listen to him, he's getting more confident every single week. The results are getting better. His confidence is getting better. And then, sure, some of you know, some of you don't know, he drives for the Wood Brothers. The Wood Brothers is affiliated with Penske, and that's what makes me really like Penske even more, is they were able to take their affiliate team, give him the information, and he got the job done. Harrison Burton starts 9th. Nobody's going to play the guy, all right, because they don't see that upside. He needs to finish 12th to make value. So, I'll take my chances. And then the other 2 I'm going to stick out with is McDowell and Gilliland. They start 17th and 22nd. They had decent speed, nothing great. McDowell isn't really a great flat track driver. Gilliland is probably his best, type of track. He does very good. He was very good earlier this year in Phoenix. So I like their upside. But for me, the nut of it is what these guys need to do to hit value is basically maintain their position, gain a position or 2, whereas a Keselowski, an AJ Allmendinger, Austin Dillon, those guys got to gain like 8, 9, 10 positions, 12 positions to be able to hit value on a track that's hard to pass. So I will take, where they're starting and at the lower ownership and hope I win with that strategy. So, I don't mind Ty Dillon a little bit. The guy's solid on flat tracks. He's done a good job this year. And then, the other driver I think getting a lot of push down here more than what people think is Zane Smith. I'm not going to go on Zane Smith this week. He's driving for Buescher. I think he's going to pussyfoot the car around the track, and, he's going to be happy finishing. It's his first NASCAR race. It's his first time in these cars, which there's a big adjustment between this car and what he was driving in trucks. So nothing against him. I like him. He's a good truck driver. He's going to probably end up being in the Cup Series one day. But, I'll pass on, his first opportunity.
I just met a juicy detail there, Coop. And I do think it's very interesting the strategy you're taking with finding the value town drivers towards the bottom, because I agree with you. No one's going to play some of these guys. I'm one of them. So I think that just being different on slates like this is really the cream of the crop, right? Because you just need certain things to fall your way. And then you're in the, no pun intended, but you're in the driver's seat, right? Also, real quick, we have 140 of you watching and 70 likes. I think we can get ourselves to 100, right? So that means, let's see if my math's right, 141. That means 71 at least of you dickheads are watching this video and not liking it. This isn't rocket science. I feel like we're giving good info. Maybe not. That's subjective, but I feel like it's pretty good, and it deserves us to get to 100 likes. So help a brother out. And again, I say, think about the sacrifices Jason Paglia made for this show today with the buzz. Think about that before I don't know if I want to like the video. I'm on the fence. Think about Jason Paglia. Like the video. Thank you all. And let's get to 100 so we can end the show on a high note.
So did you do that yourself, Jay?
Yes.
That makes it even more impressive. That should make us get past 100 likes. That's even more impressive. Even fucking more impressive. All right. So key fades. Jay, I'll start this part with you. Who are drivers today that no matter what's happening in the race, I guess that's hard to say, right? But who's drivers today that even coming into the race, not a chance you'd even think they're gonna come near the top guys that you're just completely off today.
Most Chevys, I would say, like you just said, a live race presents a lot of opportunity sometimes. But yeah, I think Chastain probably is going to run and be your top Chevy. After that, Tyler Reddick, and then Hendrick is going to struggle, I think. So I probably, unless we have an opportunity like we have to get on them live, am going to stay completely away from Chevy unless I have to get on them. And Coop's right. Probably Kyle Busch is, and maybe in terms of winning the race, maybe only Kyle Busch is the only Toyota that you can even consider. But I wouldn't. Like I said, I would just take those 4 Fords and rock with those guys.
Makes a lot of sense. And then Coop, on your end, who are some guys that you're completely off today? And then we'll final up the show.
Oh, we're going to end the show. One more thing. Significant advantage early in this race are stage 1 props. You can now get them on DraftKings. They're on Barstool. They're at Bet365. Chase Briscoe and Austin Cindric have a significant advantage in a 45-lap shootout on the front row, which could potentially go green for 45 laps. 5.5 to 1 and 7 to 1 on both those guys. I think you have to bet them both. It's a really good early spot in this race. Aside from that, that's it.
As far as fades, I mentioned Chris Bell. I'm fading that 10K range that we talked about up there, minus Kyle Busch. Won't have any of him. I just don't see, the upside for the other drivers. I think he's the best one to take chances on, from those drivers who are priced above 10K or right around 10K. A couple of the drivers that have mentioned, Suarez hasn't been good at flat tracks earlier this year, so I'll pass on him. I think some people will chase him because he's got a decent starting position. I think other people are going to chase Ricky Stenhouse. I love playing Ricky Stenhouse, but I will pass on him this week. He's not very good on the flat tracks in general. His results this year weren't very good to begin with. And he said they redid the car basically as far as the setup and package goes. And it's completely different than what they ran, in those 3 flat track races earlier this year. And, based upon what we saw this weekend, it hasn't proven to be any better. So I think he does get some, bump too, because he has 4 consecutive top 10 finishes. And then that's about it. Corey LaJoie, I don't like playing him on tracks that are less than 1.5 miles. But if you're looking for a good GPP play. He is in a Chevy, which means slow to me. But he actually did put down a decent qualifying lap, and he had a couple wiggles in that lap too. So if you want to take a chance on LaJoy, I don't think he'll be highly owned, but it's not going for me. But in the end, I'm going to wrap my pants in Ford today. And, I'll have lineups that have all 6 drivers be Ford. Some will be 5, some will be 4, but I'll have at least four drivers in every single lineup.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. And Keg, in relation to you for final notes here on this track, maybe some things you're looking for, maybe for the folks that aren't able to watch live, who's a guy maybe you're targeting live to get a better number at, or just some final notes for how you're approaching this race today.
Yeah, I ordinarily almost always bet live outright winners, but I really do feel like, first of all, you have to remember this is a very short race. These numbers on these drivers live, especially if these 4 Fords get out in front and stay out in front early, are going to plummet way faster than what we saw last week or what we see in general, which is why I think that you really should consider taking all 4 pre-race. Aside from that, I'm going to let the race guide me. If there's somebody we have to get that's marching their way to the front to feel safe about, we'll get on them. If not, I would say just stick with those 4. And also 4 to win the race plus 155 is something you should probably consider today as well.
Love it. Love it. Coop, any final notes from you?
No, man, I think we covered it pretty well.
Awesome. And one last thing. If you haven't already, Underdog, early NFL Best Ball, $10 million Best Ball Mania 3 contest. Use promo code RunPure. Get you, if you're new sign up, get you $100 sign up or deposit match bonus with your first deposit. I'm sure as NFL gets closer and closer and closer, folks will be wanting to join, I'm sure. But yeah, the early bird gets the worm. You get that $100 deposit match bonus. So definitely look into that. And other than that, look, folks, thank you for watching. I wish you all the best of luck with this race. Yeah, you'll see me in the lobbies. You'll see Coop in the lobbies. Maybe you'll even see Paglia in the DFS lobbies. But needless to say, he'll be crushing the betting end on that front. And yeah, folks, look, enjoy your Sunday. It's beautiful weather over here. Beautiful weather all around, to be honest. So yes, gamble responsibly, stay safe, and as always, run pure. Simon, let's get out of here.